All right, good morning, everybody. This is the March 14th, 2025 Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. And I guess I'll start with introductions since we have some people in the audience. I'm Jean Borak, Chair of Public Health and Safety. We have Vice Chair Cindy Rickards on Zoom, remote. And then Mike Simonson, member of Public Health and Safety. And we have Manager Maggie Dodds, Mayor Andrea Deutsch, and Public Works Director Jeff Elden. And we also have committee members in the audience we'll introduce later. Okay, so.
Can I just ask, is John String online?
Yes, he's online. Yes. So
I am. Good morning.
Online, we also have Tony from Panoni, a traffic engineer. And that's it, right? Okay, so we'll start with approval of the January 10th minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the January 10th, 2025 Public Health and Safety Committee meeting.
And a second from Cindy, and all in favor? Okay, minutes are approved. No presentation items, action item. This is a motion for the recommendation of approval for a striping plan on 200 block of Price Avenue. Can I get a motion for that?
Second. I move to approve the striping plan for the 200 block of Price Avenue.
And second from Cindy. So Maggie, do you want to provide the summary, or should we hear from Tony first?
Sure. So actually, Tony, did you want to hop in here and explain?
Yeah, I can kind of go over this quickly. So after some comments from Jean and from Maggie, we updated the striping plan here to show less pull-out space and to make some minor modifications. So what we did here was we took out all the pull-out spaces except for the one that you see here close to the North Essex Ave intersection. That's going to be the only pull-out space, to keep as much parking along the roadway as we can. We also removed the individual parking stripes. That way, we can allow. We should be able to allow for a few more vehicles to be able to park in this overall section, as opposed to having one car being constricted to a 22-foot space, as opposed to maybe you can fit one car in like a 20-foot space or a 19-foot space. We kept the sight triangles next to the driveways. That way the cars pulling out can have a little bit of room to be able to see as they pull out on Price Ave. And these areas will also can also be used as another pull-out space. If another vehicle is traveling through Price, they can use these spaces temporarily to pull over and wait for oncoming traffic to pass by. We also included the signage that's currently on the roadway. So there's a few signs on here. There's a couple no parking here at corner signs near North Essex. There's a couple of signs describing 2-hour parking, or no parking after storm or snowstorms, and a no blocking driveway sign. So we thought that keeping these signs would be useful, and adding one do not block driveway sign to accommodate the driveways that are on the westbound side of Price. The one that's currently there is only on the eastbound side. That's a brief summary. Do you guys have any questions?
How many spaces would we lose on the block?
So currently there's about 29 spaces, assuming a 22-foot long space. And with this configuration, we would be dropping down to 23 spaces. So we'd be losing 6.
And just to provide a little bit of context, so they had originally come back to us with a plan that removed a lot more spaces. And based on what we were hearing from the residents on the block and their concerns, we wanted to kind of minimize the loss of parking while still effectively addressing the concerns that the residents raised, which was the limited sight lines from the driveways and also just the conflict points of in the narrow sections of the road, cars not having the room to pull over to let the oncoming car pass. So this is the second iteration of what we talked about. And then we're also intending this to be a pilot. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so as we just discussed, this is to open up some sight lines. It does remove a couple of parking spaces, but we feel that this will kind of help to provide some of those pullover spots. We are, though, going to be doing this as a temporary pilot program, so we're not intending this to be permanent at this time. This is to see if this will address some of the concerns that were raised by the citizens. So our public works team will go and do the striping. It's like a temporary kind of spray paint striping, so we anticipate that once it's established, it will be up for about 6 months. And we appreciate any feedback from the residents on the block if that helps to alleviate some of the concerns with pulling in and out and increasing those sight lines and opportunities to pull over to allow for cars to pass.
Any other questions, concerns, or discussion from the committee?
So after 6 months, how will people chime in on their comments on the changes?
Maggie, what do you think the best avenue for that?
Right, so I think that, what we would like to do is to hear from feedback from residents, during that process. Obviously, it takes people a little bit of time to get accustomed to the striping once we make that temporary change. So we want to give it a couple of months, see how people find it working. If it has made an improvement and people would like to keep it, then what we'll do is convene in 6 months, and then if we want to formalize it, make it permanent, then we will move forward with doing a more permanent striping. If folks find it unhelpful and it doesn't achieve any safety goals, then we can remove it, and then it'll just go back to existing conditions.
What is the best way? Say residents find some parts good and some parts not as helpful. Like, what's the best way for them to communicate that to everybody?
They can reach out to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the
To-
committee would be the
Okay.
best.
I just wanted to make it clear how to facilitate that process.
I mean, our emails are, on the borough website or stop me on the street. But actually, it's better to get emails because then we can keep it organized and
Sure.
make sense.
So it sounds like,
And I think we can remind the folks who live on there as we're getting up to the 6 months point that we want their feedback.
Right, so if the committee will find it helpful, we could send a letter out to folks on that block and just, ask for the feedback if they haven't provided it already, and then invite them to whatever meeting we actually make that
Yep. It'll be September,
recommendation.
October.
to either keep the striping, remove the striping, or we could, modify the plan if some things are working, other things are not. We can, re-engage with Pannoni on the matter and ask them for recommendations based on their best practices. If there's something that we can modify and try another 6-month pilot program of a different variety. So it's this is a kind of low input, hopefully high impact project. But certainly we appreciate the feedback from the residents on the block.
I love the idea of a letter going out to them so that you have direct contact and you don't rely on them, figuring it out.
I guess the one question is, are we going to modify the signage for this proposal, or do we wait on that until the 6 months is up? Because that's a little more significant investment.
Right, so Tony had explained this, but Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. All of the signs are existing, so we're only going to be moving one sign and then adding one sign.
Right.
So the signs are installed by Public Works. It's not a very high cost to manufacture an additional sign to install that. So all the rest of the signs will be existing. So we just relocate one and then add one. So again.
So, but we're doing that now.
That would
As
be
part
done
of
as part of the.
Okay,
Correct.
that's what wasn't clear.
Okay, well, thank you. If there's no other discussion from the committee, I want to open it up to public comment, just for this action item. If there's anyone from the public.
So my name is Kirsten Palambaro, and I and my husband have lived on 211 Price Avenue for 22 years. So first of all, we want to thank you for actually doing something, because we had been bringing this forward when our kids were small, and meetings were often at night, and I teach graduate school. And so I was often unable to be at the meetings, and it was predating Zoom, so we couldn't do anything. I appreciate the idea of pullouts. I'm also representing the Winfields who live at 214 Price Avenue, and are in Particular Arch right now, on the beach. But this plan, while it makes sense to have increased pullouts, actually requires people to want to yield. And our issue on Price Avenue is often, even when there is room to pull over, people don't yield to, I yield because I don't want my car to get hit. But we've probably laid out about $5,000 in 22 years for fixing our cars that have been hit by hit and run cars. My car got hit last month. My car got hit the month before. And we have wondered repeatedly, Greg Winfield and Deb Winfield also, like, why a traffic calming of one way in whichever direction the borough chooses with a speed hump. We understand one way increases speed, the Pannoni report said that, but speed humps reduce speed or speed cushion. And while I wish that people did not drive like maniacs through the borough, we don't drive 25 in Arbor, despite what the logo says, right? That our cars get hit all the time. And I think this works with reasonable people. The people that live on my block would absolutely yield to each other, but it doesn't happen, and it never happens. And people are screaming at each other and laying on horns and refusing to yield to a truck that clearly can't pull over, right? Like the furniture delivery truck cannot pull over, right? But you can in your little whatever. And, I feel like I used to live in Center City. I feel like I live in Center City on my block. It's all day. And it's worse in the summer when people are like hot and angry, but it's a lot. And so I just want to put that out there. It's a great plan. I'm not convinced.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think this is a pilot program, so we'll definitely assess how it's working in the next few months after it's implemented.
Kristen, can you just spell your last name for me?
PALOMBARO.
A-R-O?
EARO, and my first name's KERSTIN.
Sorry, K?
ERSTIN. My husband's Joe Loudson. Okay.
It's helpful, Rebecca lives on Elmwood and I live on the side, and my mirror has been knocked off my car 4 times. I kept fixing it.
Yeah.
So just so you know,
Yeah.
it's really like the whole United States of America
Right.
is a bunch of rage drivers. So I don't know if that helps you, but I just don't want you to feel like
No one yields.
Wow.
No, because we've always
Yeah.
wondered why Woodside, we always wondered why Woodside is in one way in one direction.
Well,
Your
that's
guys' one way in
yeah.
one direction. We always wondered that. We have friends that moved from your street because they got tired of the cars getting.
Is there anyone else online for public comment? Anyone else in the room?
No, I just want to say, I just feel like it's a deeper problem that we might be able to fix with. I mean, I sympathize and think it's a deeper human problem than, a speed bump or whatever. I sympathize but as I said, like I've got this mirror hanging off the side of my car, so I'm just not gonna fix it yet. It cost me like a couple $100 every time, so Anyway, sorry, I'm just trying to be
I appreciate it.
human to human, it's the human, what is it, health and public safety, what's it called?
Public health and safety.
We're talking about human health and safety. Sorry.
And it looks like we have a comment in the back.
Hi, excuse me, Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley. I want to commend the committee on this plan. I think it's a very difficult balance of creating space while maintaining parking. And here's been support that as the human condition becomes apparent and we're speeding more and yielding less, that it is, I think, part of our work as a community to understand what the human condition is and adjust what we need to do to be safe. So really just applaud the work of the committee. We spoke about reaching out to the residents of the block to get feedback. I'd just like the committee to consider reaching out a bit beyond just the residents of that block. As someone who lives on the corner of Dudley and Price, I drive through there and notice, the safety and other concerns and the ability. I think the space at the corner of Dudley, Essex and Price is going to be very helpful for the turnouts. I think I and maybe others would be able to provide good feedback about that. So it's more people to reach out to, but it may be worth sending a letter, not just to the 200 block of Price, but maybe to other neighboring areas to make us aware of the change and request feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's all for public comments. And so I will take a vote on this. All in favor of approving the striping plan for 200 block of Price Avenue?
And I just want to say, I am very open to, if this does not work in 6 months, to looking at more serious endeavors.
Cindy?
We can't see.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so that's
Thanks.
3 in favor. Okay, and then will this go to council?
Yeah, so we can put this on for council next week for formal action by the full board.
Okay, great. And then next is discussion items. We have parks and recreation events. We have the chair, or
No,
I'm sorry.
Chair, I'm sitting in the chair.
Right. Rebecca Moore, who's a member of the Parks and Recreation Board.
I can just go over when we met, when the group of us met, the committee met, I think in December. We wanted to map out activities that would broaden the appeal of our parks. And as you all know, we have the Master Parks Plan, and that will be implemented over many, many, many years. But how do you get people to start being engaged in and enthusiastic about our parks? So we came up with 3 activities this year that we are going to try. One of them will be in April. It's a family movie night in the Narberth Park itself. Then we also have 4 environmental discussions that we're mapping out that will take place. I think the first one is in May in Elm Grove. I was Zoom. I couldn't hear what the first one will be, Jean, but I think you were at the meeting. Do you remember?
They have not finalized anything yet, but I know they made an outreach to Refugia.
Okay, good. So we're trying to find ways of also introducing people to Elm Grove since it's a new park. And then the third activity will be a little more ambitious. It's a food truck festival or whatever that will take place on September 20th. Currently, the thought is to do it in Sabine Park. So I think, and I look to my friends here, Jeff and Maggie, we had a meeting the other day to map out the movie night. And I think from a public parks and safety or whatever, that we're confident in what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So we already have, Jeff was able to negotiate with a company that he's worked with in the past to provide all of the equipment, the movie, the licensing, all of that is taken care of. People will bring their own seats, lawn chairs, blankets. It will be at 7:30. And the movie is going to be The Sandlot. I am not familiar, but I understand people love it. So that The Sandlot. It's something, so that will be the movie. We are hoping, and we came into an issue, we were working with a gentleman that is Dennis's neighbor who started a nonprofit, Narberth, Friends of Narberth Park. And he has the C3 designation to potentially bring in folks that could provide popcorn or pizza or something like that. But I understand that we can only work through Fongy. I don't know if you got my email yesterday. They don't have designation yet, so we're kind of up in the air about what we can do about that.
Right, so just to touch on that briefly, I did reach out to our solicitor for clarification on that, so we can touch base after the meeting.
Perfect, thank you. So that we think is pretty much well set. The rain date will be the Sunday after that. The food fest will have 4 different food trucks. They'll have to bring their own power. We're hoping to have some music, so we need power in order to do that. And obviously trash and all of that has to be taken care of as well. So the current thought is to do it in Sabine, but it's still long enough in a planning stage to be able to figure out whether that's the best location for all of that would need to happen from a traffic perspective. I don't even know if there'll be traffic, people will walk. So that's what the food truck festival will look like, and that will take place from 4 to 8 on September 20th. And I believe that Dennis will follow up and schedule a meeting with the folks in management here in the borough to just map out that, because it will include alcohol, and alcohol will require many more steps in order to make it available. So we are aware of that, and we are working towards doing that as well.
Did I miss the date for the movie night?
Yes, you can, April 26th with a rain date of April 27th.
Okay.
I missed saying that, thank you.
Well, thanks for that update. The reason we wanted to have you come here was just because this is a new thing for Parks and Rec Board to hold events in the borough. And I just wanted to run it through the committee to see if there was any concerns from Chief John String and Director Eldon because I know some of those events will need some support on that end. So are there any questions or concerns?
I would also ask Bill Henderson about if they're supplying their own power, are there any regulations with food trucks and supplying their own power with propane or whatever?
I mean, the food truck probably should be inspected prior to opening for business, but
Okay.
it's not a major inspection.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is just for the first year. We hope to do more activities in the future, so learning who needs to look at it, who needs to approve it before we go to the borough council will be great. So thank you for doing this.
I love the idea of some walkarounds, nature-based walkarounds
Yeah.
at Elm Grove, because I think some people, I live sort of at the opposite corner. Some people don't even really understand its existence and what we're trying to accomplish with it. And, to have a naturalist sort of take us through and explain the
I did also,
ecology of the park, I think would be really nice.
Or just to have talks about things that are nature-based and and just introduce people to Elm Grove, but also we have all these other areas that we can hold these talks.
so I shared the contact information for Lower Merion Conservancy and for
good.
EAC and Friends of Narberth Green Initiative. So I think those are potential partners. For
Absolutely,
educational
Yeah,
events.
I think, and it's important to acknowledge the fact that Lower Merion Conservancy wrote the grant that paid for most of the.
Correct.
Yeah.
But people seem to forget that all the time, so.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot of money.
we plan on having many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chief String, did you have any questions or concerns about these particular events?
No, we had spoken at the meeting, and I don't think there's any law enforcement concern as far as, needing the staff officers or any traffic concerns. So, but we'll continue to monitor it, and if something develops, I'm sure that we can communicate and get it taken care of.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. And Director Eldon, any concerns from Public Works?
We all met
staff?
at the same
Okay,
time, yes.
yeah, okay. Okay, any questions from the committee?
No.
Okay.
No, thank you so much. This
Yeah,
is
thank-
exciting stuff.
Excited by this?
Okay, then we'll move on to the next discussion item. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yes.
Which is traffic calming on Meeting House Lane.
I guess I asked to put this on the agenda, so if you want me to.
Sure, I mean, Jeff can provide an update on
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, so this was approved, last year at some point, I believe, in the fall. And, we had the amendment to the budget to purchase these temporary speed humps last year. So what this picture is showing is just the exact placement that came recommended from our traffic engineers on where they should be placed. So we wanted to put that in front of you all to see it before we draft this into what we're gonna mail out to the affected houses.
And what's our timeline? I keep getting nudged. I'll say nudged.
It'll probably take us about a week to, type stuff up and get that mailed out to the houses. And, the actual physical install of this is a half a day. So we just need to notify the affected houses, give them some time, and then we'll come up and install them. So I would definitely say by mid-April, we can have these installed.
Okay. So it would be mid-April for the temporary speed hump installation. And then Meeting House Lane is also on the paving schedule in the summertime. So, and then we would consider permanent speed humps at that time or shortly after
Yes.
in the fall. Okay. And then, do you want to talk about the cost for
For permanent or temporary?
for temporary?
Yeah, so the two of these cost the borough just shy of $3,300. The good thing about these is they are budget. So we will be able to install these, have them on that road for several months, then take them and use them elsewhere if we're instructed to.
And we already have them.
We have them, we have the paint, we have the signs, and we have the tools to install.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any questions from the committee?
I just know that the folks on that block, especially with the opening of the stores, are very eager to get those pumps in. So I don't think you're going to get any back when you get the notice out to them.
No, thanks, folks. I'm sorry. I have to hop off, so I'm going to apologize. But thank you for all your work.
Thanks, Cindy.
I think I noticed coming out of the driveway of the stores that the no left turn sign, has that been removed?
Yeah.
It was, okay,
I was wondering, because
okay.
We also have Bill Henderson here from the fire company. Any concerns on?
Most traffic calming measures reduce the speed of responding apparatus as they're designed for regular traffic, so it's just another part of life. It's not, Meeting House isn't one of our major response routes, so.
Yeah.
And we do go down it occasionally, though the speed humps are not an issue for the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Any other discussion on that? All right, then we'll move on to the next discussion item, which is the street light at Woodside Avenue. The memo was included in the packet from Jeff Eldon. Do you want to provide an update on that?
Yeah, certainly. So we received a few calls from folks on that block, on the unit block, particularly near 28 Woodside Avenue, that it is just dark. That windstorm we had 2-3 weeks ago on that Sunday night, there was actually a downed wire there. And when I was driving up Woodside, trying to locate the wire, I almost drove right into it, because the road is in fact that dark. The spacing, which is recommended for most newer streetlight installations, is around 150 feet spacing between, and we're at about 225. The next streetlight isn't, through the next intersection. So that run is what I see very dark. The south side is a very walkable part of the borough. So we're recommending that we contract with the contractor who did our retrofitting for the LEDs, install one on an existing pole at the price of $1,446.
And then, is the process to notify the residents in that area of the light going in, or what is the process?
I would, just because it will be a shock to a few, because not every home on that block asked for it.
Right.
So I think it's the appropriate thing to do, just to get in touch with the other homes, who will be affected by that spray of lights.
And I just want to also point out that that is the route for the mainline greenway. So I think the lighting will have a big difference on bicycling safety on that road as well, and pedestrian safety. Any discussion, questions from the committee?
I assume it's gonna be LED design.
I can't see. I couldn't see the screen. Okay, if there's no other discussion, well, thank you, Jeff, for the update. And also, we don't need to take an official action on this because the cost is minimal. Right, okay. So we'll move on to the next discussion item, which is pedestrian and bike accessibility. So first is the mainline greenway. I did attend the Western Mainline Greenway workshop this past Friday, and that was meeting with the township managers and the township engineers and all of the organizations, transportation organizations like GBF, TMAC, DBRPC, Bicycle Coalition, and they're looking at extending the mainline greenway out beyond Villanova, so into Radnor, Tredyffrin, and some of the townships I don't even know out there, East Whiteland, West Whiteland, so it was a good meeting. So I just wanted to make that update. And then in terms of the first phase of the mainline greenway, that's still on hold. They're hashing it out at Lower Merion Township in terms of what the final plan is going to look like. So hopefully we'll have an update on that soon. And then I think that's it for mainline greenway. Do you have an update for the Lower Merion and Narberth Active Transportation Plan?
Yeah, not much, but for the active transportation plan, we did hear from Montgomery County Planning Commission. They are looking to set up a meeting, hopefully next week, for us to sit down with Lower Merion and Narberth representatives to talk about how they would like to display the active transportation plan. So they're working on the network analysis map. And so MCPC is working to develop this web experience format. So it looks like it's going to be, so what they're working on right now is building out the network map features on this interactive web experience so that they can present the draft network in order to receive feedback from the steering committee. So before they can receive the feedback, they wanted to build out this web design platform. So they did reach out to us to set up the meeting just to discuss if the mapping that they're working on is going to be then sufficient and appropriate for us to review and then provide our feedback on everything. So I don't have a timeline of when that will be completed. Like I said, we're meeting with them in the next week or so. But some of the proposed maps, so they would have a map showing the existing network So it would be sidewalks, crosswalks, existing trails, existing bike lanes, existing multi-purpose pathways, and traffic calming installations. So that would be what we have today. The second map would be the planned network. So this would be showing all of the proposed infrastructure improvements. So anything that shows up in a comprehensive plan, a capital improvements plan, anything like that. And then the third map would show the recommended network. So highlighting additional connections where it makes sense kind of between the existing and the planned network, and then providing detailed intersection improvement locations. So identifying some key areas for pedestrian and bicycle safety. So like I said, I don't have a timeline of when that will happen, but once the map experience is built out, then we'll be able to dive into reviewing everything and providing those comments for further refinement.
Okay, thanks for that update. Any questions from the committee? No? Okay. And then we'll move on to committee reports then. We have Carson from the Shade Tree Commission here.
Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate your support of what we do at the Shade Tree Commission. So the biggest events, everything we do focuses on April and November with our planting. So we're deep in the actually doing of the April planting. We're planting 19 trees, and we're still taking requests. We're also recruiting volunteers to work with us on that day. And I want to thank all of you who've ever volunteered. It's really fun if you want to get up early on a Saturday morning and come.
It's actually a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. She comes, and Berta drags her kids and everything. It's so great. We appreciate it. And I should say, if you read the science, like if you look on the science side of traffic calming, trees are one of the #1 ways. Like if you ever walk on the Avon, where, it's American safety, but people drive more slowly there. Big trees, it really is a fact. So I'll just say, and we always can get you free trees. We have volunteers to dig the holes. We have volunteers to plant the trees. So anyway,
Carson, what kind of trees are you planting?
Well, we get them mostly from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. So we have a range of sizes. Anyone who lives on the wire side, like I live on the wire side, so I have a small tree that doesn't get taller than the wires. And then just recently, the year before last, PHS told us we can plant in people's yards. It used to be that we could only plant within the right of way.
Right.
So that's really expanded what we can plant. We get a different list each time. And then that's what we put on the form that the citizens use to sign up. So we always have a good range of size.
To let people know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're planting on April 12th this year, which is a little bit earlier than we usually plant. But there's Passover and Easter and the spring break for the school district. So I wanted to update you on the recommendations for council. You had asked us to write a recommendation for tree planting in the downtown. So we're working on that. Back in January, we did our step-by-step walk around everyone. It was kind of funny. Everyone on the committee, but we were all looking at the measures, which things have bigger sidewalks, which don't. We talked to Jeff about the grades, and so it's coming, but there's more to do. Dawn Weisbord, who's one of our stellar members, she actually drafted it, but we have to tighten it up, and so it's coming. We're also working because of anticipated turnover in leadership, which always happens with humans. We just started working this past meeting on creating an evergreen schedule because, again, so much of our activity is focused on the actual tree plantings, but then we do a lot of other things, as you know. So we're working on, what happens 6 weeks before a planting date, what happens 3 months before a planting date. So if in the future, we have all new people, then it's going to be easier to keep it moving. Okay, so I wanted to make, the other thing I just wanted to remind people that the heat index and the butterflies, I don't know if anyone read the New York Times article, but basically it's not someday, it's right now. We have already lost many butterfly species, and people talk about the monarchs. dropped 80%. So we're really at the end of the time of people being able to show their kids butterflies. So planting trees and not chopping down where the butterflies safely stay over winter really makes a big difference. That's one of the things we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, so I just want to make one sort of business request, and we weren't sure if we brought this to the committee or we go to administration, but there's a funny little overlap between when our appointments expire. So our appointments expire on the 31st of the year of whatever year it is. And a member expires every year. Member's appointment expires every year. Thank God it's not a member expiring every year. But because of the way the approval is done with Borough Council, we have the month of January where the person whose appointment expired can't vote. It's just awkward. And I don't know if anybody else has ever raised this with you, because I guess everybody's appointments expired. Is that how it works for most commissions?
Yeah, so this was, and they had just been because of the transition that we.
Oh, okay.
But what I would like to do is work on a timeline where we can make the appointments earlier in the year. The other thing is that we didn't hold a reorganization meeting this year with council. Those are held on every other year on the years.
Okay.
So then that is always held like the first Tuesday. So typically on those years, we hold the reorganization meeting, and so we will do the reappointments for all of the other boards and commissions at that time. So then those are made, the boards and commissions actually meeting for the year, so you don't have that weird.
Oh, okay, we just started doing.
I think it was because that wasn't, because of the transition that didn't get taken care of in December, so then we had that few weeks until council met for the appointment, so that won't happen. But I appreciate you.
Okay, I didn't know, I thought that was a repeating thing, so thank you, you already.
Already on it.
Excellent,
Yeah.
thank you so much, I really appreciate it, and kudos to the borough administration through all the ups and downs and rocky waves. You've really just done a great job for us. We really appreciate it from the Shade Tree Commission. So thank you.
And thank you
to
to the Shade Tree Commission for all that you do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really, it's a rock star. We have, it's Christina Baylor, Dawn Weisbord, Bettina Hess, and then Rick Trolleys and I. And I don't know, I think it's a good group of people, and we want to keep going, and we're committed to making a big difference here.
And you may know this already, but Finance and Administration Committee is actually looking at your charge, trying to figure out if we can give you additional hours for not the planting so much as maintenance, because there's some ambiguity in the ordinance as to whether, you can go on to,
Right.
even the trees that you've planted, now that you can plant them on private property,
Yeah.
there's nothing that says you can go back and maintain those, because
Right.
right now you can only maintain things that are in the right of way. So
Exactly.
Finance and Administration is trying to figure out how we can maybe give you some additional authority in that regard, and a process for doing that, because obviously you'd have to, once it's planted, it's technically the homeowners,
Yes, that's correct.
property, so, we can ask them to trim if it's, we're specifically concerned about, the maintenance near corners where it might impact visibility on the right of way or overhanging on sidewalks, et cetera. And we've been talking to Jeff about that, how do we get somebody who's allowing their shrubbery or trees to get into the public way, basically, and how we can make sure that if they don't do something in a maintenance perspective, whether we can give you the power to go and take care of it.
Well, we're volunteers,
I
so
know.
we probably have to work with someone like an arborist who's actually.
No, right, exactly. Rick we've talked to Rick
Yeah,
about this
I know.
a bit, like just trying to figure out, how we could potentially go about that. No
Yeah.
promises.
I think we would lean on having a professional do it rather
Yeah,
than.
oh, yeah.
That reminds me too, I'm sorry, I finished my points I wanted to make, but, You know, we had a couple of snafus, and Maggie, I think this is partly because, again, everything was moving around, but we had a couple of snafus this year with the Shade Tree Commission not seeing a plan for, that had gone through, the redevelopment plan or the, like,
Land development plans.
yeah, so, but I think you're on top of that now, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so that is another thing that we're looking at, in the administration, just coming up with a policy for the subdivision land development process.
Yeah.
And that's, finance administration is working on that concurrently as well to clarify
Yeah,
the Shade Tree Commission involvement in the land development plan and identify at what point in that process you get looped in on that review, for your feedback. So yes, that is
That's
also
great.
something that will be done.
yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing, this guy, who- I think it's Dudley, right, the one that we just looked at.
202 Dublin.
Yeah, and, you know, he wasn't aware that Narberth has a policy to plant from a particular list of trees. You know, he just didn't know, and I thought, boy, it's so complicated, all the moving parts, so whatever we can do to support people in having the information they need about trees.
It's not just about, we're actually trying to figure out almost having a Q&A
Oh, sure.
checklist for any builder, developer,
Great.
you know, like, these
I
are
think
the,
that would be very helpful.
these are the things that, you know, these are the steps you need to take, this is how it works. You
Great,
know, the bigger developers kind of get the gist, but when you're just rehabbing an individual house, you know, they might not be quite aware
Right,
of the
and so-
requirements, so.
yeah,
um,
and we're happy to help, I mean, one of the biggest problems is whenever I go over to the Rite Aid and I see what they've actually done, and I remember all the meetings we had about what would be planted there, and I'm all kind of like, why did we do all that work however many years ago that was? And now I see what they're planting, and it's like, but maybe that's something that we could also figure out, how do we make sure after the fact that they actually have done what they said they would do? You know, with all the stuff they have to think about, plumbing, you know, it just boggles my mind. Trees are kind of the last thing anybody really is thinking about, so.
Yeah, so just to touch on that briefly, as part of the land development process, that is part of the punch list of things that our engineer reviews. So
Oh, okay.
when reviewing the land development, actually the construction portion of it, landscaping is typically the last thing that is put in.
Okay,
But that is something that, you know, they have the approved planting plan for the approved land development plan. And our engineer does go back to
Okay.
ensure that all of the plantings are done in accordance with
oh,
that land development plan. And then there's typically an 18-month maintenance
Right,
bond
okay.
period on land development, so that if any of the plant material dies within that 18 months, the developer is responsible for replacing it. So we do actually track that and inspect that as part of our engineering services under the land development approval and authorization, and all of the agreements that we sign with the developer at the time of approval. So that is managed, inspected, and signed off on.
do they look at the species that does the engineer review the species that they look at?
They should, yes.
Oh,
Tony,
okay.
do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, we do look at the species of the plants, and I know our landscape architect reviews that and is familiar with the species of trees that Narberth has. I know they have a list of approved species types that are, so our landscape architect is well aware of that list and does review the plans with that in mind. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take pictures.
Yeah,
Maybe I can see.
if you have a concern about Rite Aid, I would be very interested in knowing that, since I live back up on that block. My Shirley Road neighbors are very concerned about the tree curtain that's there. So if they're not complying, I would love to know it
Okay,
and
great.
be able to work with you in that
Great.
regard.
Yeah, thank you. I know I've taken.
I can walk down my block and look through my neighbors. You know, they basically took down, and those old vegetation probably needed to come down. It was not in great shape, but right now it's pretty darn bare, and most of my neighbors along there are anxious about what the tree curtain will look like.
Well, thank you. I feel like I took up your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Appropriate, but thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sorry, we do have to
No,
move on.
no,
but
yeah, of
thank you
course,
for that.
of course, no, sorry.
So we also have Rebecca Starr here, Chair of the Police Advisory Committee. And
We didn't meet last month, so I don't have anything new to report. We're primarily working, I'm hoping, Mike or Maggie, that we sort of waited for some transition to happen, that you spoke with Katie about the website and development. Has she been able to connect with one of you? Not
I haven't
yet, okay.
heard. But we're in the midst of completely redoing the website.
I understand,
so-
that's why she's,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm asking. She was supposed to reach out to you for, and I know she did in January, but we wanted a better sense of timeline, process, because we're working on both FAQ, but also figuring out what is the information that citizens want that's not FAQ, right? So not everything can go into the FAQ. So we're trying to sort that out right now, and part of that is also just understanding the timeline and how you're developing the website.
So it's, want me to speak to that?
Yeah, you want to.
So we actually, Maggie, Kelsey and I actually had a really good meeting last week with the website developers.
Okay.
Just in terms of, we're still at the point of sort of look and feel and what we want it to look like and try and get to sort of ease of navigation. One thing that I was really impressed by was, we sort of gave them our structure of how everything lays out, and it's, it's an intersecting spider web. And one of the things that they're really good at, because, there's these folks develop specifically governmental websites, and, sort of their underlying theme to us is you got to think like a resident, not like a governmental person. So, if I'm a resident and I want to go see X, like, how am I going to find it? So the easiest example they learned was we had a tab that said departments, and it said council, and then it had the mayor, and then it had the police department, and then there was a separate tab that was like public health and safety, and the police department wasn't under there. And they're like, nobody cares that the mayor is technically her own department from a governmental perspective. They expect, if they're going to click on public health and safety, they're going to expect to see the police department phone number, how to get in touch with the police, not under the mayor, then police department.
That's exactly what we're trying to sort out.
Yeah, so, we'll probably be asking, once we have sort of a overall mock-up, then we'll be coming back to all the committees for content.
Okay. That's good to understand that process,
Yeah.
since we have sort of started the other way. Is there a way that we can get an example of some of the sites that the company that we're working with has built out? Because it would help us understand their approach.
Sure.
Yeah, so I know when Kelsey was demonstrating, when we were going through the process to identify and select a vendor for this, she had been citing, it was the,
So last month,
I guess we
if you
should
go
have
back
picked
to
a
one of
vendor, I
the
can
borough, yeah.
find
so
this.
there's all, yeah, so the vendor is Revise, Revize.
Okay.
It was Victoria, Minnesota, maybe? Town of Victoria was one of the examples that we were looking at.
Okay.
But if you go back to the council meeting where Kelsey presented on this, she was demonstrating some of the examples of some other concepts that the company has done.
Okay.
So we're kind of cribbing from other examples and adding our own flair to it. So, we're working through that mock-up, but the initial contract timeline was about 6 months until we have a finished website design. So
Do you have a sense of when you're going to need content from us, just to give us a timeline?
So I know we're working on the site. The site mapping is really, because that is the structural bones of the website, everything else is filler that can be added kind of after the fact. And we can always, add extra pages. So what right now we're really focused on is, as Mike was explaining, is that site mapping, that structure. So just to have, the spot, a landing page for the boards and commissions, and then in terms of specific content, we can fill that in later. So to answer your question, no, I don't have a definitive timeline when that is. The site mapping process will be kind of the main time that I'm sorry, we will need to be focusing on that kind of for the longer timeline, and then everything else kind of gets filled in on the back end. So maybe in another 2 months or so.
Okay.
That's would be the earliest that we would need to start engaging with specific content. I'm guesstimating, but we'll inform all the boards and commissions.
Since we started it, it's just helpful to know. Sure.
Yeah.
two plus months is what we're
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at.
you've got time.
We've got time, we've got at
Okay,
least
okay.
2 months, if not longer, until we actually need to reach out for specific content.
I mean,
And then the
we
other,
really want to just, we really want to get the look and feel right. I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that our current website is just so clunky and hard to navigate. I mean, if I can't find what I'm looking for as a council person, we'd have a problem.
that came out of the community survey is people are like, well, what does the police department do and how do I reach them? And
Yep.
that's
Yep.
where we're coming from. And so we're thrilled that this is being done because this makes our job so much easier than having to recreate everything on our own.
That was also part of the council's charge to the police advisory committee to kind of think about what kind of information can go on that webpage.
Exactly.
Because to have it on an official borough website page makes it, there's a lot of rumors going around as to like how things work or how you're supposed to make an outreach to the police department. So to have it come from an official direct webpage, I think it will be helpful.
Absolutely. Because the other big communication thing is how to reach the police, as you said.
Right.
And we're trying, obviously, we've discussed in here and we made in that report that we looked at like a 311 option that seemed to be not feasible. The police department, I know with the help of Kelsey, is pushing out 911 for everything. But we're trying to figure out how much of a problem is it, but we consistently are hearing complaints from people that are like, yeah, I called and I left a message and then they didn't respond. My car was broken into. I didn't think it was an emergency, so I didn't call 911 and it took too long. So we're still looking at the data on this, just so you know, to try to figure out if there's more work that needs to be done on this.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for your work on that. We're running out of time, so I do want to move on. So we have departmental reports. I know the monthly report from the fire company is attached. Any other updates from the fire company?
No, thanks.
Okay,
Should hopefully self-explanatory.
all right, thank you. And any update from the police with the report?
No, nothing to add other than what's in the report.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to make a public comment? Go ahead.
Hi, once again, Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley Ave. Two things. One, once again, just commend the committee for all the work that's being done to improve public safety. The work on Sabine, Meeting House, replacing or adding a new light on Woodbine or Woodside are just great examples of that. And thank you. The other is just an ask. I believe a lot of the work for public safety is ensuring the safety of people who walk, ride bikes, drive, and of all ages and functional abilities. One of the things that I noticed is we've had a great expense to put curb cuts on every corner. And yet, as Mike was alluding to earlier, there are many places that somebody who's using a stroller, a little kid on a bike, somebody using a walker or a wheelchair, they can get off the curb cut, but they can't use the sidewalk because of overhanging shrubs overhanging. And I see it a lot just in the area where I live, that people will, with kids on bikes, people in strollers, people walking with toddlers holding their hand, they go on the sidewalk and then they've got to walk in the street and then come back to the sidewalk. And I think it's critically, was that my 3 minutes? Sorry. Critically important that we think systematically about how to address this. Right now, I think it's like a one-off system. If somebody reports it, then it may be addressed over time. Mike, I thought your suggestion for the Shade Tree Commission to be involved, but it's really a public safety issue, and I think it needs, deep involvement to be addressed more rapidly. We're all going to feel terrible if some toddler or someone in a wheelchair gets hit by a car because they couldn't use the sidewalk. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. Anyone else?
Reaching to the converted here. I mean, Joe, if you end up being my colleague and sitting here, you and I will tackle this head on because accessibility is a huge issue for me. And, I am deeply committed to wanting to do this on a more serious way, because I absolutely 100%, 110% share your concerns. I mean, it's not just a safety issue, but we can't have a walkable community if it's not walkable, or, and I don't even want to say walkable community, I want to say accessible community, right? Whether it's walking in a wheelchair, people using a cane, our sidewalks have to be free and clear and usable by everyone, or we fail as a community. And I feel incredibly strongly about that. People have heard me say that before. We'll just leave it there.
Thank you.
Agreed. Any other comments from the public? There's no one else on.
No, there's no one else.
All right. With that, I'll close public comment and I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the March 14th, 2025 meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee. You have to second.
Oh.
Cindy's not there.
Oh, okay. I will second. The meeting is adjourned at 11:01 a.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right.